This is the 21st season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, AFTCO, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. Occasionally, the schedule sets up between the BPT and the Elite Series and the NPFL and my schedule where we get a little backlogged. And that was the case the past couple weeks on the Bassmaster Elite Series as they went to Lake Fork and then cruelly sent the anglers to the Sabine River afterwards, where guys literally could have won the tournament in 4 casts on Lake Fork with what it took to win on the Sabine River, with Pat Schlapper getting his a very cool first Elite Series victory. But that doesn't mean that we don't need to go back and visit it. So recorded show today. I'm actually out of town right now. I'm actually in Mexico bass fishing. But I wanted to get a first-time Elite Series champion, very narrowly missed Paul Elias's record. We thought going into that final day that it was going to be broken, but we weren't. I don't know if anybody knew that Tucker Smith would be the one who came closest to it. So we're all said and done. Like I said, recorded show. It's a couple days after the Sabine. Tucker, thank you for jumping on BTL to chat about an absolutely epic tournament that went down on Lake Fork. And we'll ask you about the Sabine afterwards. I would imagine that had to be hard after going 33, 35 to go to the Sabine River afterwards. But thanks for jumping on BTL again.
Heck yeah. Thanks for having me, man.
Was that a hard deal? Like, dude, you weigh in 127 pounds, and then you go to the Sabine River where the big bass for the event wasn't even a 5-pounder. Was that hard to get your head around it? I'm sure you had tons of people calling you, talking to you, and then you go there and you're trying to grind out 5 12-inchers.
Yeah, it was definitely a big jump for sure. I had such a good time at Fork, and then I got to Sabine, and I was so tired from fishing Fork for however many days, 7 days straight, and then we get there and it's like totally a different fishery. I've never been to the Sabine, and we had 3 days to figure out, in like a 90-mile stretch of river, even probably more than that. So that place was huge, and it was definitely a big jump going from Fork to just catching a 12-incher is a big deal at the Sabine. So having a limit's a big deal.
All right, let's talk about Lake Fork. You go in there. How old are you now? 24?
I'm 23.
23. Wouldn't want to age you out there. That'd be getting a little too old for your prime there if I gave you that extra year. 23. You go into Lake Fork. There's a lot of history on Lake Fork. A lot of guys who have fished Lake Fork for a long time. You go in, Keith Combs, Lee Livesey. I know Ben's from Nebraska, but he spent some time on there. Transplant Chris Zaldane. Bunch of guys who have been on Lake Fork before. We saw last year that experience doesn't necessarily equate to success. Livesey's won there before, but we saw what Trey McKinney did there last year. What was your game plan heading into Lake Fork, and did you really kind of have a blueprint based on how it's gone down the last couple years that the Elite Series has visited there, that you kind of knew a 1-2 punch was how it was going to get the job done?
Man, honestly, not really. I have never been to Lake Fork, but I've done a lot of offshore fishing. That's my favorite way to fish, is using the side scan, finding the offshore hard spots in schools. So I spent all 3 days of my practice scanning with the Humminbird side scan. I scanned every single point on the whole lake because that place is not too big. So I scanned every single channel swing I could see, every single point, every single, saddle, every flat, everything that I could find. And I barely made any casts in practice. I had a lot of confidence looking at my side scan, using it, living on Lake Gunnersville and fishing the TVA a bunch. So I spent all my time practicing looking at that thing. I made a few casts and caught some big ones, but yeah, I just trusted my electronics with the side scan and put my time behind it and tried to find as many places as I possibly could that a bass would go to after they, spawned and went offshore.
So what does that look like on the side imaging? You're scanning there. Like, what are you looking for that would make you drop some numbers on it?
Yeah, hard spots, anything like a brighter return is on a point or a flat or something like that. A lot of the hard spots I was finding was, the size of a boat, size of a car, and then there were some that were a little bit bigger, size of like two boats that were super hard bottom that those fish were setting up on. And then some places I had like I think two places that the hard spots were literally probably the size of a coffee table, like tiny hard spots, but there'd be like two or three fish just sitting on them, and they would all be over 5-pounders.
So are those fish suspended on it, or were you plucking those fish that were sitting on that clean hard bottom on the bottom and then having to pull them off of the bottom to get them to bite?
Yeah, they were on the bottom. They were sitting on the bottom, just kind of roaming around. Some of those places at Lake Fork, it seemed like there's not a ton of current out there. And it's weird. You would think it would be kind of the opposite. When they pull current, like on the TVA, those fish bite and they set up and group up really good. But at Lake Fork, it seemed like it was the opposite. When they pulled current, those fish didn't really set up good, and they kind of just like got super tight to the bottom and spread out, and you couldn't see them. But when that water got more stable, we had a lot of rain the last day of practice, so they were pulling a lot of current. Floodgates were open, so it seemed like that first day of the tournament, they were just spread out, couldn't find them, and then as the tournament went on, that water got more and more stable and it cleared up a good bit. And those fish started to really group up even more on the bottom when that water stopped moving as much, which I thought was pretty strange, but it seemed like that's what I figured out.
Why do you think they like to sit on hard spots post-spawn so much?
Man, I don't know. I've always wondered the same thing. I think it's like, I don't know. I think it's they can pin the bait up against them, against the hard bottom and stuff like that, and not like throw up a bunch of mud and stuff in the air so they can see better. I don't know. I think that if there's any current, like in the lake, wind current, I think a lot of that, a lot of those hard spots are kind of directly in the path of where those shad and where those gizzard shad and threadfin swim. Like whether it be, a turn in the channel and those bait just follow up that turn of the channel and go up and hit that hard spot. I think there's a lot of different things it could be, but my thing is I think that they don't want to stir up a bunch of mud when they pin something against the bottom.
That's fair. So I want to go deep into the hard spots thing here. It's something I struggle with, right? Like I found a couple of them. Like I found one on Eufaula, Alabama one time, and I literally remember thinking, my God, I think I just found a hard spot. It was like a little shell bed deal and stuff. I ended up staying there for 16 hours and finished 42nd, and I was really proud of myself. But I remember idling over and going, that looks different. I don't know what that is. I'm from Oklahoma, and that it seems like the hard spot, as these fish get conditioned more and more to the forward-facing sonar, the minnow, baits that are presented right in their strike zone, it seems like subtle hard spots. I got a couple buddies that are kicking ass in Oklahoma right now, and they're like, hard spots, all over the opens, all across. It seems like that is the trendy thing to be fishing. You're hearing more about that. If you were to take a scuba mask and go underwater, think of your best hard spot on Lake Fork. Is it like silt all around it? And then is it rock? Is it shell there? Is it noticeably clean? Is it a little rock? Like, what does that thing look like, a hard spot, in your opinion, underwater?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be a few different things. I think it's some, shells. I drug a jig, a 3/4 ounce jig, and I was able to like feel a couple of the places. It seems like shells were down there, maybe some small pebbles. There was one place that had some like a little bit bigger size rocks that were probably like golf ball size rocks that made a hard spot on this one deep point. But most of that stuff is shell, and it's just like a shell bar that's really small. It can be small, but they can also be big. Like at Gunnersville, you've got a lot more mussels, a lot more shells that are out there. So those hard spots and shell beds are a lot bigger out there than they are at a place like Fork, because there's not as much current. But yeah, I think it's just a mixture of shell, hard bottom, especially like, just like rocks or anything that's harder than the rest of the bottom.
Is that why you think you're seeing so many of the young anglers that are having success early, particularly from Tennessee and Alabama? Now, I know disproportionately you probably have more 18 to 25-year-olds that are competing at a higher level from there. But I would also think that from a very young age, you're taught about the importance of hard spots, about how to find them, about where to look for them and set up, and that we're finding just like we've kind of found like Minnesota anglers translate well to Florida or something like that. You're finding that you're comfortable with that, and you're finding it all across the country, not just on TVA fisheries where they're predominantly known for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely helps growing up in the South because that's what we did a lot growing up. Gunnersville, Chickamauga, Pickwick, a lot of those places, they've got really good hard spots that you can find. But yeah, it's something I've been doing for a while, but honestly, traveling around the country, I've been looking for that stuff a lot. When you find a good place like that, you can get right really quick. And if you find multiple places like that, then you can actually, win a tournament off those things. But it's something that's a little bit sneakier is finding those smaller ones that everybody's, graphing those main river ledges that have the super long shell bars, hard bottom. But it seems like if you find some of those smaller ones, like off the beaten path, they can be really special.
Remember like 12 years ago, I was out when you were like 7. I was out with Timmy Horton. We were doing a Duck It On Tour episode, and we were on a TVA fishery. It was a practice day, and he would graph 100 yards from where he thought everyone else would graph. So like he would go 100 yards up shallower, or he would go 100 yards away from where the obvious stuff was on the map. And his theory behind that was they're going to be less pressured fish. And when 50 guys idle over this, they're going to slide to the next available spot, which is going to be up because shallower water is going to allow them to ambush the bait better. It's still going to have all the stuff, and it's going to be something that 1 out of 10 guys find instead of 10 out of 10 guys that are on the obvious stuff right along the channel edge.
For sure. Yeah, that's a big deal, especially when schools get pressured. There's sometimes, a part of the school will break off and slide a little bit farther away, and sometimes those are the fish that are bigger. Sometimes those are the fish that are less pressured, and you can catch those better. But yeah, they definitely get pressured, and people are idling over them a bunch. They're definitely not just going to sit there. The majority might still sit there, but those ones that slide off are probably more willing to bite.
Now you room with Paul, right?
I do.
So
Paul and Emil and Andrew Loberg.
Yeah, that's a good house. But the tournament before, you finished second. Paul Marks won on Hartwell. Yep. So you come into Fork, you win, and Paul Marks gets second in that. I'm interested in knowing, especially with that house that you have. I think Andrew finished in the top 20 there. How did Emil do? I think he cashed a check too, didn't he?
Which tournament?
At Fork? No.
He had a really good first day, and then he kind of had a stumbled the second day.
Oh yeah, what a bum. Check. What a bum. Oh yeah, 52nd. What a loser. Do you guys talk strategy? Like, I'm just curious. I know some guys work, the Johnston brothers clearly obviously work together on the water. Like, are you coming back in after the first day of practice is saying, Andrew, Emil, Paul, it's hard spots. Let's all pool our resources, and you take this section and I'll take this section and this section and this section. Let's all find hard spots, and then we'll all come back and we'll share all of our, that sounds weird, all of our hard spots with each other, and then we'll all finish them. That's what I'm saying though. Like, did you guys all get on like kind of the same plan and share that to where you're maximizing your time on the water, or do you guys kind of work independently off of each other?
No, we honestly, that tournament, we all just kind of found our own stuff. And some of the stuff that we found was the same stuff that we both found. I mean, Emil and Paul and Loberg, they're all so good. They're all really good anglers, and they all find a bunch of good stuff too. But we don't share waypoints. We just talk about fishing like normal guys do. But no, we didn't have any strategy of you pick this side of the lake, I'll take that side of the lake. We just kind of fished our stuff, and if we ran into each other, we ran into each other. But yeah, we kind of just did our own thing, and looked for all of our own stuff and found our own stuff for that week.
All right, you started out with 25.4, which meant you were, I don't think a lot of people realize this, you were 9 pounds back on fork. Now, if you use that Ken Duke theory, It's the big bass minus the weight is what you can make back in a day. But when did you kind of start having designs on, I might have a shot at my first blue trophy this week?
I didn't think it was possible at all. I thought Koyo was going to catch at least 30 pounds. If you saw his first 3 days of fishing, it was
31, like 34, 35, 10. You went into the final day, 92. You went better. 8 pounds back, exactly 8 pounds back.
Yeah, I mean, he was just getting better and better every day. So I was like, there's no way I'm going to catch him. So I might as well just try to catch 40 pounds and try to have the best day of the week that I've had so far. And I think it honestly made me fish more free. It made me not have as much stress because I knew that I just had to go catch a giant bag and probably finish, second or third at best. But I ended up catching, I think, almost 35 pounds that final day, 34.14. And I just came back to weigh in, and we weren't supposed to look at our bass track, so I didn't look at it. But when I got back to put my boat on the trailer, everybody was like, "Good job, congratulations, you did awesome." I was like, "Wait, what?"
Because for those who didn't know, it's a catch-weigh release with the best 5. So the weight that you come in with, they obviously verify it, check it, go back, sure everything you make sure. But the weight that you put in, the weight that you have, there's no sandbagging on it because they got the scale and they hold it up, so kind of how it is until it's actually official. So that's why you weren't able to do that. But there wasn't any point during the final day where weren't more boats following you around, or you were live more, or anything where you kind of got an inkling okay, maybe Koy is not having another mid-30s sack today.
I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of boats following me, but it seemed like at one point they kind of left. It was towards the end of the day. And I don't know if it was because that storm was rolling in. There was a storm kind of rolling in, and it seemed like a lot of the boats just left. And I was like, Koy has definitely just caught 2 8-pounders. You know what I mean? So I was like, I don't have it anymore. But that was fun. I had some follow boats for a little part of the day. But no, I was I had no expectations to win the tournament. And that's what helped me. I think it just made me fish clean. And I was just ran my rotation like I'd been running the last 3 days, and it just ended up working out for me somehow.
You said stress. So you're the 4-time reigning galactic high school champion, you never lost. And then you won $1 million, and then you worked your way, you did all the college stuff. You worked your way through the opens. You're you still feel stress even after you've been on the water with $1 million on the line, after you've won all of those titles and stuff. I would imagine you've been in so many high pressure situations that for a normal pedestrian angler, I've been in it a couple times in the Bass Nations or a Bassmaster Open. And at the end, I'm boy, I noticed that. I don't know if I would have fished differently without, but I noticed that pressure, and I'm 40 years old. You've been in the pressure cooker since you were 14. You still feel the pressure on the water?
I do a little bit. I've definitely gotten more accustomed to it from fishing so much. And that's a big thing, especially on the final day at Fork. I broke off a really big fish, and I jumped off the day before that. The third day, I jumped off 2 that were probably close to 7 pounds. So, I mean, it's a lot to try to get that out of your head and just keep fishing. But man, I think it's a mixture of, just trying to have fun with it, and also being in that situation, fishing big tournaments like that, where I've kind of just been able to brush it off and be like, well, it's fishing. That happens. You lose big fish. You just got to keep going. And I know I'm going to run into them eventually if I'm fishing the right areas. So I've got some confidence in my game plan, and I'm going to keep doing my deal. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I'm going to keep fishing hard. So
you had the 132.8 on the end of your line. In a perfect world, you had the record. You had the 132.8, the Elias Falcon Lake record. You had 127.8. With what you had buttoned up at one point, you had that sucker in the bag.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
The one you broke off, was that your fault, or did it get into something?
I mean, it's just a mixture of giant fish and setting the hook super hard and not checking my knots. That was a big thing. I started retying like after every big fish that I caught, and I've lost a couple of giant ones because I set the hook too hard and didn't retie. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I would have blown the record out or anything like that, but I definitely lost some, some 7+ pound fish.
Really? One of the things that I noticed, I was talking with you before we went live on here about big minnowing down in Mexico. And one of the things that I noticed down there was, I mean, it's a large minnow. And I mean, I'm not going to ask you, you see the photos. There's a number of different minnows that are all in that 6 to 8 inch size range. But one thing that I noticed down there was those fish suck it so far back when they get over 6, 7, 8 pounds that you like check right above your knot and you're like, oh, I'm good. But like the line burr is like 4 or 5 inches above where the knot is because of how big those fish are and how much they suck that minnow in. So I did the same thing in Mexico. I like reel into some and break them. And then I realized I'm not checking farther enough up my line for the teeth marks. Yeah.
That's another thing. Like you catch a 7 or 8 pounder. It's like, you think, oh, I'm just going to check above my knot. But yeah, like you were saying, it's 5, 6 inches above your knot where those teeth marks are because they swallowed it.
Yep. All right, we are talking with Bassmaster Elite Series champion Tucker Smith. We're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, more. I got some pictures of you on the water, some stuff. I want to get into some details of why you're throwing what you're throwing. It's BTL. I'm going to run a Mexico fishing ad just to kind of parlay it right after this. We'll be back right after this. Pro Bass Adventures is reinventing Mexico bass fishing. With boats equipped with 12-inch Garmin units and LiveScope Plus, free loaner fishing rods, and no-cost airport transportation, Pro Bass Adventures is proudly putting you in the best position for success. Pro Bass Adventures has lodges on Lake Baccarat and Lake El Salto, Mexico's 2 best trophy largemouth bass lakes. Visit probassadventures.com or email probassadventures@gmail.com. The official Mexico fishing lodge of Bass Talk Live.
Beatdown is efficient.
Rock solid.
100% American made.
This thing is super tough. I mean, this thing is not going anywhere.
I've ran the Beatdown double stack from Florida all the way up to New York. And the one thing that I know is when I get to my fishing destination, I never have to worry about issues with my graph mount.
Your options are endless with these mounts, but they're steady, they're solid. These are the most reliable mounts on the market, and you can't go wrong with the Beatdown.
When you're ready to hit the water, Denali Fishing has you covered. Regardless of your skill level, from beginner all the way up to tournament pro, Denali has rods, reels, and tungsten to get the job done. Check them out at denalifishing.com. All right, welcome back. BTL talking with Tucker Smith a couple weeks after his first Elite Series win on Lake Fork, and did so in impressive fashion. It was the second or third highest winning weight total. Did Trey last year have a higher winning weight, or did you get him?
I'm not sure. I haven't even looked at it. I'm not too sure on that one.
It's got to be either the second or the third. All right, I'm gonna throw a picture up here, and I want people to focus on this rod and the action of this rod. Now, my goal is to be the most efficient 40 and over minnower in the game. It's cost me several 150 place finishes over the last year and a half, but it's a means to an end, I feel like. And who knows what the hell is going to happen with bass and the rules. And anyway, I'm also a big fan of blind minnowing. But one of the things that took me to get used to is big bass on spinning rods. Like we're talking big Lake Fork bass, like 7s, 8s, 9s, stuff like that. What are you looking for? And I'm going to throw this back up. What are you looking for in a spinning rod that allows the proper action for that little sucker right there? But then in this part of it allows you to land 8 pounders without getting spooled like you're tarpon fishing with a bass rod.
Yeah. I throw the 7.2 medium NRX. That's the rod that I've used for a few years now, and the action's amazing. It's got a backbone, but it's also got a good tip to it when you're throwing those bigger style minnows. And when those fish eat it, man, you want a good tip on your rod because you want to be able to work that bait, but you don't want the tip to be too light. When you're throwing a bigger bait like that, you want to have a little bit of a stiffer tip, but not like a super limber medium light tip when you're throwing a bigger style minnow like that. Just because when those fish eat it, you want to reel into them really hard. And I throw a big line. I throw 20-pound braid to 15 to 17-pound leader.
Oh, wow.
And when those fish eat it, I'm reeling into them and jacking them like as hard as I can to try to get them up off the bottom and drive that hook in them. But the key to it is to keep reeling. That's one thing that I see a lot of people mess up with it, is they drop their rod and set the hook like hard. And that's one of the worst things you can do. You think about it like you're holding a jig and you're across the front yard. Somebody's holding a jig in their hand and the other person's got the rod and they're reeling it. So if you're across the yard and somebody sets the hook and you're holding a jig, you might get hooked in the hand. But if you're across the yard, you might be able to absorb that with the fluorocarbon. But if you just start reeling that jig, that hook's gonna drive through your hand and it's not gonna stop. So that's the way I kind of look at it when you're fishing deep water. Is I always try to reel set and keep reeling that reel and then pull at the same time while you're driving that hook. Because if you're reeling real hard like that, that hook's gonna just drive through their mouth and you're not gonna lose those fish. But that medium rod, it's got enough backbone where you can grip those fish in. And you want to get those fish in as fast as possible, kind of. I mean, you don't want to mess around and play them around the boat 100 times. You want to reel them in really fast and reach down there and grab them and pull them in the boat, because the more time they've got that big weighted bait in their mouth, the more time they've got to sling it.
All right, let's go to this. All right. I feel like you're covering a key component up with your finger there. I'm still going to ask you about it. But when it comes to the jig head, and we started this thing with, you could say that what's the rapple of bait that everyone threw, the Crush City one? I always forget. The freeloader.
Yeah.
Like when it first came out, it was like, oh, the freeloader. I remember that was like a big minnow because we started out with like, we're just talking about the old guys here. Started out with like this baby Z2 and then went to the freeloader, and then it just kept getting bigger and bigger. I feel like as the baits have gotten bigger, the jig heads, I think we'll see a lot of things at ICAST 2025 is all I'm saying when it comes to jig heads to match big plastics.
Mm-hmm.
What are you looking for in a jig head for a big minnow? Like a 3/0, a 4/0, a 5/0? Is it easy to overpower it? Like, you guys are doing a lot of weird custom stuff to your jig heads right now that involve blow torches and epoxy and all sorts of stuff that really isn't out, but I would assume all that the jig head, in your opinion, isn't caught up with the technique yet. Is that a fair assessment, Tucker?
Yeah, I mean, there's some companies that have got some good stuff. Picasso just came out with a tungsten jig head that goes all the way up to I think it's a 6/0 hook, and they've got a 604 Gamakatsu in there. They've got, the big thing is with that keeper that they've got in that thing. It's a thicker like lead keeper that you can slide that bait over and it locks it. That's one thing that I've been having to do before they made that jig head, is I was making my own jig heads and using tungsten and also using epoxy and actually putting a different hook in a different tungsten head and kind of making my own. But you want a big hook when you're throwing some of that bigger stuff. I throw anywhere from 3/0 to a 6/0 hook when I'm throwing bigger stuff like that. So it just depends on how big of a minnow you're throwing. And
then you were adding, so that was Kumar kind of called you out on that. Is that like some epoxy deal that you're putting down the shank of that hook so that minnow stays more dead center and doesn't rip as easily?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. I mean, you can do the same thing with super glue, but
Okay.
it kind of just holds that bait on there better than just a regular bait keeper. It's just something that I've been doing for a little bit, but
all the minnow guys have their own hook
Yeah.
and head, and like I said, like there's guys who spend hours on each jig head. There's other guys who pull, who will pull one right out of the pack and be like, it's all good. Like there's a debate between the EWGs, like with the Gamakatsus. Like I love the Horizon heads. I have no problem throwing those. There's other guys who insist on round bends. You mentioned the one from Gamakatsu. Now the other thing that's big that I would like your take on is no loop knot.
Yeah.
There's some guys that swear on the loop knot. I know Felix has the Dream stroller out. There's others that are on the market that have a ring in them. What is your take on the ring or the loop knot as opposed to just tying the knot straight to the eye?
I don't think it makes a difference. And I've talked to a bunch of different guys that tie the loop knot. I've talked to a bunch of different guys that don't tie the loop knot. But in my opinion, I think it doesn't make much of a difference other than you're not sliding around under your eye and stuff. I think that without a loop knot, I think it's more direct action on your bait. I think that you've got a better return on the action of your bait when it's directly tied to the line tie instead of having a gap there where it's sliding around and it's not really getting direct action. But I mean, I've seen people throw both and both people have success with it. I think it's just what you're comfortable with and what you've got confidence in.
All right, let's get into this because I know there's going to be guys that are listening to saying, you just chuck a jig head minnow at them and they're big and blah, blah, blah. We already went through how you found them or whatnot. Now, your house is a murderer's row of minnow magicians. Even though Loberg, he's old. He's like 30-something. He messes around with the minnow a little bit. But you, Marks, Emil, you don't want any part of those guys in a minnow derby. Trust me this. Talk to me about the skill of working the minnow to generate bites, because I think that is a massively underrated. Now, you can't work the minnow if you don't have the forward facing and put it in front of them, but it is painfully aware after having spent hundreds of hours of this and in the boat with some of the best guys in the world that there are guys in certain situations, particularly, that know how to generate bites where you take an everyday normal fisherman who can put the bait and cast it and do it in the same thing, and that fish isn't going to eat his crap. Talk about how you just the difference of generating bites, the skill, the style, the different personalities of what guys do that I think you cannot translate until you're in the boat with someone where they're doing 8 out of 10 and you're doing 4 out of 10.
Yeah. I mean, I've spent thousands of hours looking at, minnows and doing different things with it. And there is a huge difference in somebody that's been spending a lot of time with it and somebody that hasn't been spending a lot of time with it. It's unreal. I mean, you can see it when you take people fishing. I've taken some people fishing that I've showed them how to throw, minnow and taught them and gotten on a place where there's a bunch of fish and tell them to throw down there and, watch the minnow, and you'll see the fish come up. And it's like a lot of guys just don't understand the action on how to exactly work at the speed of it, especially when you've got waves and you've got wind. The presentation is everything. But there's so much little tiny details about trying to present that bait right to the fish. These fish have so much pressure. Lake Fork has got an immense amount of pressure on that fishery. Probably the most pressured fish that I've ever fished for. You see 100 fish on one place and you can't get them to bite anything. You might catch one fish and then the whole school shuts down and you can't catch them. But that presentation is everything. And there's a huge difference on presenting your bait in the right way and not. And there's so many small details that I've had to figure out over the years that I'm not going to share publicly. But
the way that I equate it, and this is sacrilege. I'm going to get comments on this, and I know it. And I'm not saying it's identical, but it's the best comparison I have. If I'm on Lake X and Greg Hackney is in front of me with a 3/4 ounce hack attack jig with his signature and there's flooded bushes in the water.
Yep.
And I'm just your average everyday fisherman. He's going to go down there and he's going to flip that row of bushes and he's going to catch 8 8 good ones out of it. And I would go down that exact same, or the average angler would go down that exact same with the exact same bait and the exact same setup and catch 2 out of it. That's kind of how I translate it to minnow fishing as well.
100%.
Like, it looks like you're just taking it and you're just putting it in the bush and you're waiting to see what bites it. But it's the nuances that make the difference between a 40th place finish and a top 10.
Yeah. It's all about, and also it's about timing. It's about finding the best fish. It's about finding bigger quality fish. Like I was saying, the biggest thing for me at Lake Fork was finding my rotation. And finding your rotation when you're fishing offshore fish is crucial, because a lot of those offshore schools, they have a bite window when they bite and when they're grouped up the most and they're the tightest, and that's when they bite the best. And I had to find that bite window every single day, and I got better and better throughout the tournament with finding it. That first day, I had practiced scanning the whole time, so I didn't really know my bite window. And after that first day of the tournament, I slowly kind of figured out, hey, this school starts to fire up at this time. This school starts to fire up at this time, because I had about 8 places that I was running. I was running them throughout the day and trying to figure out when the best time was to pull up. That second day, I got my rotation dialed in, and I ended up catching 34 something pounds. But it seemed like by the end of that tournament, that fourth and final day, I knew exactly what hour to pull up to each school when they would be grouped up the best and when I would catch the biggest ones. It's all about timing.
And it's different across the lake.
It's different everywhere, different across the country, different across every lake, different if there's current, different if there's no current, water clarity, everything. It's like there's so much to it, for sure.
That doesn't make sense to me, because you would think, oh, they're pulling, or the moon phase, or whatever the bite time is based on the solar lunar tables, it's going to pop off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's not.
No, I mean, it's weird, especially Lake Fork's a different animal. You would think when they open up the floodgates and the current's ripping out of the lake, you'd be like, oh, they're going to be chewing offshore. But all my offshore places had, like, that first day when they were ripping the water, had like 2 or 3 fish on them. And then you come back the second day and the water's more stable. They're not pulling as much out of the floodgates, and there's 10 fish on each one of them. And then you come back the third day and the floodgates are off, and there's 30 to 40 fish on each place. And then the final day, the water's not even moving, and there's 100 fish on like 3 or 4 of the places. So
there's that many fish down there in Fork that you think they've all been stuck, and they're like, yeah, we know this game. Yeah,
they're so smart. I mean, some of those places I'd get one bite and I'd have to leave, and there'd be 50 of them swimming around because you couldn't get them to bite. And then you'd pick up a crankbait, throw it down there, and catch one alpha reaction strike. But yeah, other than that, you couldn't hardly get them to bite. You had to get in a rotation. That last day, I made one good stop on one place where I caught 3 in a row and caught 3 over 6 and 3 casts, and I got them fired up. But other than that, like, it was a grind.
All right, let's go back to the pictures. There you are. After you just realized you won. You give a little hug there to Koya. Like, is he chill? Like, I haven't had him on BTL. I kind of want to have him on BTL. I don't know how that conversation would go. I shared a hot dog with him at an open one time, but then Sego was there to translate, and he had like 9 layers of shorts and like form-fitting shirts on underneath. And I'm like, dude, this guy's like, and obviously, like, his history with how he did in Japan and stuff. What is, like, I mean, he's a young dude. He's on the Elite Series. He does wild stuff out there. Like, you guys have a house of all, like, bros. Like, what's the vibe with Koya out there?
Koya's sick, for sure.
Like, you guys hang out? Can you talk to him? Does he joke around?
I mean, he doesn't speak the best English, but I think he acts like he can't speak the best English because he doesn't want to talk about his baits.
Really?
You'll see that on
Yeah, Koda used to do that. Koda Kiriyama.
I don't know if you saw that TikTok, but I think it was Ricky asking him, he's like, what baits were you throwing? Were you throwing a big bait or a little bait? And he was like, I was throwing a big bait and a little bait. And I was like, what colors? And he's like, white and green pumpkin. I'm like, all right, Corey, you know exactly what he's asking. But no, he's cool. He's unreal. You just saw at the Sabine River, he wasn't using live scope. He's he's one of the best shallow water fishermen from Japan. And that's what people don't get. Everybody's like, oh, these guys are all live scopers. But in Japan, a lot of these lakes, they don't live scope. They go down the bank and they're sight fishing, visually sight fishing for these fish that are cruising down the bank. And they're having to throw these crazy baits to get these fish to bite because everybody's pressuring those places. But Koya is one of the best shallow water fishermen. He was flipping this past weekend at Sabine, and you could see it on the live videos, but he was flipping and pitching around heavy cover with it looked like a Nico rig, but he was ripping them out of there, and that's something that he's been doing for a long time. But he's a really, really good angler, and he's scary. He's scary to fish against.
Yeah, so you guys are on top of everything. Now, legally, I know you're not allowed to look at photo galleries during the tournaments or anything, but you guys don't miss anything, especially when a new bait comes out, a new minnow, you're years in advance. It has to freak you out when like you and Paul are sitting there sharing a Dr. Pepper and you're looking at it after the tournament is over and you see stuff like that on the end of the line. And then you go back through and then you see stuff like that. Are you guys not sitting around going, what the hell is that? And how do we get our hands on it? Or is that, I mean, like, will he always just have crap that no one has ever heard of?
I saw that.
Or do you think he's trolling everyone? Like, do you think he actually threw that? I
mean, it's a possibility. It's a possibility. I saw those pictures after the tournament was over, and I got in the truck and was driving back home, and I opened up Bassmaster and I saw that thing. I was like, I've never seen anything like that. But I
mean, it looks like a cow patty that's been through a cheese grater. But then on that first one,
it's an octopus.
So he's got me all messed up. I got a bunch of these now, and I don't know what the hell to do with them. And I've even been on the water with the guys who invented them.
Yeah, it might have been a pump fake. They're so secretive, man. It's like,
are you guys like every time he does that though? Are you guys going out on all the Japanese sites and all that and buying all that stuff and taking it back and chucking it at fish and seeing what they do to it?
I mean, I'm going to go to Japan this winter. We're going to go to Japan. I think me and Paul and Hayden are going to go to Japan and take a trip up there and just go to the tackle stores and look at everything that they've got. Cause
it's badass.
I want to go and get some stuff and bring it back over here and see what happens.
I did that last October. We went with Kyle Welcher and John Cruz to the Sunline Factory, and then we did 2 days of tackle in Tokyo. And I it's overwhelming. You need to call me off air before you go, or talk to John, or don't call me. Talk to Kyle Welcher. The guy's an angler of the year. He's way better. He understands it because it's so overwhelming. But I doubled down on minnows, and I brought 26 different types of minnows home with me in my spare suitcase. I mean, you can look in my garage. I got 2 Rubbermaid tubs of stuff that is absolutely bizarro world. I bought every different type of minnow. I should have apparently bought pink chatterbaits while I was there, but it is what it is because you kind of have to focus on one thing or else you end up with subpar of everything. So I would go straight to the plastics and straight to the minnows, and I bought every different type. I bought 26 different types. So, and their jig heads are wild. And then I was just in the boat. Like, there is definitely American minnowing and Japanese minnowing. Have you ever been in the boat with any of the Japanese dudes with their minnowing? It is drastically different.
I haven't.
They're like, we do it like double quarter pounder with cheese and a 44-ounce big gulp, and they're like, you know what I'm saying though?
Yeah.
Like I was just at Hartwell for a media event, and I was with the dude who worked on the Judy fish. And one of the other dudes, he was a guide on Biwa, and he had his little app, and he's like asking me like, do you have blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, no, I got like 4.4, 5.2 and 7 gram heads and 3.4 and 5/0. And I've got these, and I've got 5, 6, 7, 8-inch minnows. And, I like have my app, and I ask him, and I'm like, hey, be honest. Like, what do you think? And he's like, rod's not good. Line's not good. Hooks aren't good. Baits aren't good. So
he said your stuff's trash.
Yeah, so he takes like a jig head, and he does a thing where he like takes all the lead off of it, so it's just the 90 degree, and then he takes like my smallest minnow, and then he like adds the weight and the like all sorts of stuff, and then he's down there just like straight reeling it. And you know how it was at Hartwell, like those fish are petrified of anything that reminds them of a freaking minnow at this point in their life. And he was able to like be like 3 pound spot, 3 pound spot, 4 pound largemouth. And I was like, oh my God.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So yeah, you guys are
Nice.
definitely going to spend a lot of yen in the tackle stores.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of that.
So I was gonna buy. I don't know if I can pull it up now. I need to pull up the. Okay, here's the final day. Let's go back to this. This is the last thing I want to ask you about, dude. Like I said, you've won a lot. What did it mean to get the trophy in your hands, to be an Elite Series champion at 23, to get the belt, to have your family there? I know they've been a huge support of you through good times, through bad times, through sketchy times over the last 3 years. This had to be a pretty special moment, especially when you look at, I'll zoom in on that. When you look at a picture like that, I was able to meet him at one of the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame dinners a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But I mean, dude, what did that feel like?
It meant everything to me with my family being there. They've been with me, obviously my whole life, but they've been super supportive, and they've been the best parents that I could ask for through everything. And being able to win on Mother's Day was so special to me because my mom, she likes to fish with me around the house in ponds and stuff. I've taken her fishing as well, but her whole family, her side of the family fishes. So to be able to carry that out and fish for a living now and share that time with my family, all the hard work that I put in, and to really, to show it to them. And it meant so much to me. Aaron Martin's also won on Mother's Day.
Oh, wow.
At Lake Havasu and on the Elite Series. And I was able to win this one on Mother's Day. So when I heard that, man, it gave me chills all over my body. And I was just in shock with how I knew Amart, and it wasn't just a coincidence, Amart was definitely looking down on me that day. And he told me when I used to hang out with him, he said, you're going to win a blue trophy one day. And I was like, yeah, you're full of it, man. I'm not going to win a blue trophy. Like, there's no way. I was just in high school when he was telling me this, and he's like, he knew, like, you're going to win one. I was like, just thinking about that all week and how it meant so much to me.
Dude, he'd have been a badass minnower.
He'd have been the best.
Yeah, he would have been unreal. I wonder if he dabbled with that. I mean, in the last couple of years that he fished. Do you know if he did? Like, did he ever mess around with the jig head minnow then?
I mean, not really. He had live scope, and he would look at it and like catch fish with it. Like, he was starting to get good, like seeing fish with it and stuff like that. But he was like, he told me, he said, you better get good with this because this is going to be the next big thing. And that I spent the last 2, 3, 4 years just spending a lot of my time trying to dial it in. And yeah, I mean, he knew it was going to be a big deal, and it was.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens over the next 10 years in professional bass fishing. There's a lot of good. There's a lot of good that's going on with it, with the sport right now. It's interesting. You go to the opens, and it's a lot of younger people. Like I said, I had Rick Pierce on, and I had him on because he stopped me. We were walking up at the very first open of the year, and he's like, "Hey, Matt," and Rick's fishing the opens too. And he's like, "Look around. What do you notice?" And I was like, I could be everyone's dad here. And he's like, "Isn't that what we wanted? Isn't that what we're talking about? Growing the sport, about getting these young kids in?" But I also see like there's a double-edged sword there too, because I feel like there's also an importance and appreciation and an understanding of history and where we've come from there. So you can't completely throw away the past for right now, because then you lose your foundation of what it takes. But it takes a special group of anglers, and there are a number of those on the Elite Series. I would put you in that category as well, who are on the cutting edge of everything, but have a foundation and an understanding of where the sport came from and what needs to happen to keep it competitive, pure, and allow for the growth for the next 10 years and not become one-dimensional.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like I was saying, I mean, I grew up fishing without live scope, and I didn't have it was a while before I had a live scope. I think it wasn't until I think freshman or sophomore year of college when I started catching fish with live scope in tournaments. So I mean,
So
I
all the
fished
high school titles were all no
yeah,
live scope.
all high school was no live scope. Freshman year of college was no live scope, and then sophomore is when I started to figure out about live scope and started to catch fish with it. But that yeah, I mean, I've been growing up fishing without it, and I've just now implemented it into my fishing style. And I caught one of the big ones the final day on a 3/4 ounce football jig. I caught 1/6 in the morning on a swim jig. So
Tyler
I like to
Williams
mix
did.
it up. So
Tyler Williams did. Caught one on a big jig. That is an ugly ass jig that he throws. I can't get over how ugly that thing is.
he likes. I mean, he's got a way to work that thing. It's just I think he makes it just look more lifelike than anybody else. He's
Yeah.
definitely wiggles the jig like perfectly, make it look like a crawfish. I don't know.
What's crazy to me is that you have not fished in a Bassmaster Classic before, and you're in really good shape right now. You're in the top 20. That's probably one of the few, or if only, things that you haven't accomplished by 23 already. Has that crossed your mind, especially with it coming up in Knoxville, a mix of smallmouth, largemouth on a current-driven fishery, to launch your boat outside of Neyland Stadium right there next March?
Yeah, man, I've been wanting to get to that tournament for a long time.
You've been close, like
yeah,
real close, like one cast away. How many times?
yeah. I got 2 seconds in the classic bracket in college, and then I got 2 seconds in the opens last year. So, and then I got a second at Hartwell, and I finally got this big win, man. And I was just blessed to be able to get that win, but it was a blessing. And yeah, I want to fish that tournament bad. I've come up close a few times, and I finally want to just get in that tournament and just relax and have fun, because it's a tournament that I've been wanting to get to my whole life. It's the reason why we fish. I mean, it's the Mecca, and it's the biggest tournament, I think, in my opinion, in the world. So I want to get in that tournament and fish in it.
I have a feeling you'll fish in a lot of them before it's all said and done. Is there a chance? I'm looking at this. So Emil's in 27th. You're in 15th. Paul is in 11th. I know Loberg sucked it up at the beginning, but he's made a nice little comeback. Does he have a shot? Hopefully I've passed his name. How is he in 78 still? He's had like a bunch of good derbies. Well, yeah, you guys need to have a little pep talk with Andrew there. I know he's the old man of the group there.
He's the dad of the house.
Yeah. No, he had a
the guy that wakes
15th
us all up.
and 18th, a 68th. Yeah. No, it's that 102nd that kicked things off at the St. John's that really hurt him. But, maybe top 10's the last three,
Yeah,
and he somehow slides in.
He could do it.
But that would be cool if the whole house made it.
For sure. Yeah, all the guys have the capability to make the classic and do good. So I'm excited for the rest of the year. We got 3 more left, and they're 3 places that I like to fish. So I have
Mississippi River, Michigan,
Clair,
St. Clair, and
10 Killer, which I haven't been to 10 Killer, and I don't know what to expect, but I'd like to go. I'd like to go figure it out. But yeah, St. Clair and Mississippi River, I'm excited for those.
Very nice. Anything else you want to get in here before I let you go? I know you're doing a ton of interviews. I appreciate you kind of short notice jumping on BTL. You're definitely one of the guys that I wanted to get on. It's kind of hard when you win. Jeffries, when he ran the show, used to always talk about, I always felt bad for the guys who won the first end of the back-to-back, because everyone goes and then you've got to practice. And then after that, they have the next one. And then everyone's like, oh my God, Pat won his first one too. But he always made sure to go back and get the front end of the back-to-back.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Now, I mean, one other thing I would say is probably just to all the young guys, if you got a bunch of young guys listening, or even older guys that are listening, is just have fun with tournament fishing. If you like tournament fishing, you just make sure to not get too caught up in the bad finishes. You know, I just had that win at Lake Fork, and then I go to Sabine River and have an 85th place finish. But it's just, you got to have fun and sit back and not take it for granted, because we get to fish and do this thing we call tournament fishing, chase after fish, and it's such a blast. And we've got people fighting for our freedom right now, and to be able to fish tournaments like this and have fun, we just got to have fun and not get stressed out, because there's a lot of times, you know, you blow a tire going to a tournament, or you lose a big fish, or there's a lot of things in this world, that bad things that happen. But just make sure to have fun. That's something Amart always used to tell me, is have fun when you're fishing. Don't take it for granted, and just go out there and don't get stressed out and have a good time.
I'll leave it at that. Thanks for jumping on, Tucker.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
All right, see ya. All right, that is Tucker Smith. I had him on last year where he talked a little bit more about the Amart stuff, kind of his relationship, getting into it. I think it was in October. You can search that up on YouTube or on the MP3s, the iTunes podcast, if you have a question. But really well done. Tucker Smith, been around for a long time, even though he's just 23. Like I said, he won the $1 million there with Logan Parks, Johnny Morris's $1 million U.S. Open. Not the One Bass U.S. Open, but when you're Johnny, name it whatever you want. So he's like, I want to have a U.S. Open too. And then they won it on Table Rock there. I think he was a 3-time national champ in the high school. Mentioned back-to-back second-place finishes in the college bracket, and then he worked his way through the Bassmaster Opens, and he can catch them. Yeah, that is a house. That could be one of the houses. So we had Velvic on last week. That could be one of the houses that goes down in history, just like these guys all room together, like John Murray, Skeet Reese, Byron Bell, like that whole kind of legendary stuff. These guys are a little thing more dialed in on the fishing it is. But this has been another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live. We'll talk to everybody later. See ya.